Welcome back to the School of Redstone. In today's lesson, we're going to be going over hoppers. We have a lot to go over, so let's get into it. So let's start with how the hopper actually functions. You might notice that I do have an arrow on the side of this hopper, and this is showing which way the hopper is actually facing. This is not going to be on your standard vanilla hoppers. This is actually a texture pack. If you're interested in finding this texture pack, which will cover the hoppers, observers, and a bunch of other redstone components, then you can find that on a website called BedrockTweaks. I'll link that down inside of the description below. So with the hopper, we have the bottom part here, which is pretty much the chute of the hopper, and this is going to be the output. It does not matter if the output is facing straight down. It does not matter if the output is facing to the side like this one is here. You can face the output whatever direction that you would like, as long as it is not facing up, because, well, the hoppers cannot flow upwards. They can only flow side to side and directly straight down. So that pretty much covers the output side of the hopper, but what about the input? Well, whenever you think about a hopper, there's actually two different ways that this hopper can get items put inside of it. You can have the hopper, which is going to be able to pull items in. Whenever you throw an item on the top, it's going to be pulled in immediately and put inside of that hopper. And depending on how the system is set up, will depend if it leaves the hopper immediately or if it's stored inside of the hopper. The second way that a hopper can get an item inside of it is if another hopper pushes another item into the hopper. By having the output of the hopper with the item facing into the side of the hopper or the top of the hopper. So if we place a hopper on the side of here, and then we place an item inside of here, as you can see, it's going to push it into this hopper, even though it's not going directly into the top input. The hoppers can also do this to other containers, such as chests or droppers, dispensers, anything of that nature. But keep in mind, because the hopper itself is a container, it can also have the hopper feeding into another hopper, like you see over here. However, you can also have the hopper facing into the output of another hopper, so basically, we're going to put an item inside of this one, and we'll throw in a comparator. That comparator is going to be pushed over, and then it's going to be briefly held inside of this hopper, and then it's going to be pushed over and basically go back and forth. So you can see that going back and forth. And for my next step, I'm going to actually need this comparator to show you. So let me grab that, and we'll throw the fence in there instead. And as you can see, it's going to pass that back and forth. Now it's only going to do this because it only has one item inside of here. If it had more than one item, then it's not really going to pass it back and forth. However, if we pull out that item and we put in, say, a stack here, it's going to have one piece go over, and then it's pretty much going to lock it up. So we only have one over here and one over here. So if you ever wanted to make a clock with this, you would only need to have one item inside of there. So we'll leave that one piece of wood, and then we can place down a piece of glass right over here. Put down a comparator to read that container output, and as you can see, we now have a flashing redstone signal that we can actually hook redstone to and get a power output with it. Now with this texture pack here, it's going to be very easy for you to see it. However, with the vanilla, it's not as easy to see. So beware of this whenever you're running redstone nearby your hoppers, because it's very easy to accidentally lock these guys and break your system. So we have a piece of redstone dust here that's directly going into the side of here. So we're just powering this one hopper. Now, because this is like most components and it is not like any of the droppers, dispensers, lamps, or note blocks, it is going to function more like a regular component, like a piston. So whenever we power this, it's not going to power the neighboring component. It's only going to power the one hopper. And that's not going to change regardless if you have it soft powered or hard powered. So if we turn on this lever, you will see that the hopper is actually glowing red now, and that is indicating that this is locked. Whenever a hopper is locked, the hopper is never going to be able to pull items in, and it's never going to be able to push items out. So you can see we don't have any items inside of here, and we only have one inside of here. It's not going to push this out because this is locked, so it's not going to allow anything to come into it or leave it. However, as you can see, as soon as we unlock that, it's going to pull that item in, and then it's going to push it over into the next hopper. And as mentioned, if we hard power this with a repeater, as you can see, just this hopper lights up because only this hopper here is locked, this one is not. If you are wanting to lock more than one hopper, then you can grab some redstone dust, and then you can just run redstone dust across the hoppers, just like this. And you can place redstone dust here, and then it's going to power the redstone dust, which is going to go over it. And because the redstone dust soft powers whatever block it's on top of, it's going to lock whatever hoppers the redstone dust is directly on top of. Now the way that the hopper will work is the hopper will always push an item out of the output before it pulls another item into the input. And the reason being is if you have a completely filled up hopper, having this filled up with 5 stacks of 64, there's absolutely no more room inside of this hopper. Then if it tried to pull an item in here before it allowed it to push, then the hopper's never going to be able to get rid of its items. So if this thing is all the way filled up, and then it pushes first, then it's able to push an item out of here, and then after it pushes an item out of here, it now says, well, the hopper has an empty spot, and then we can pull a new item inside of that empty spot. So just remember that the hopper will always push before it pulls. Now let's talk about a little bit of hopper speed and the rate of pickup. Whenever this hopper is open to the air like this, it is actually able to instantly pick up items. So if we take all of these stacks here and we throw them on top of the hopper, they are all instantly going to be pulled inside of that hopper. However, if we look here, we have these guys draining out slowly, and that's because the hopper speed is going to be limited to 2.5 items per second. So if you ever hear anybody talk about hopper speed, that is what they are saying. The hopper speed basically means that you have a item flow rate of 2.5 items per second. However, with multiple hoppers, you are able to increase this. So if we place that on, now you can see that this is filling at double hopper speed, because now it's filling 5 items per second instead of 2.5 items per second. So the entire system of transferring items is only going to be as fast as the slowest item. And what I mean by that is if you have this chest here that is being filled from a farm from this hopper line here, and pretend that we have a giant farm here that's producing items very quickly. All those items are pouring into here. Well, this hopper can instantly pull all of the items into it. However, it can only get rid of the items out of the output of the hopper at a rate of 2.5 items per second. And the same thing goes for this hopper, and this hopper, and this hopper. So even if you just had one hopper inside of the line, and then you had a crazy fast system on this side, and a crazy fast system on this side, but they had to pass through this one single hopper, because this thing only flows 2.5 items per second. That means that this entire system is only going to flow 2.5 items per second, because this is the weakest link and it's the slowest link. And because it is that slow, if you have a crazy powered farm on this side and it's only flowing 2.5 items per second, that means that you're going to quickly fill this up, and then you're going to have items piling up, creating a lot of lag and making it to where the items despawn, which is definitely no good and will cause you to lose a bunch of your drops out of your farm. So it's always vital that you have a sorting system that can actually deal with the output rate of your farm. And this is a lot of the reason why I had such an issue trying to keep up with the rates of the piglin bartering farm on the Project Bedrock server, because that farm puts out about 80,000 items per hour. However, you can use other hoppers in conjunction with this, so if you made another line here by adding another line in, then you now have 2 lines going that flow at 2.5 items per second. So we have 2.5 equaling a flow rate of 5 items per second going into this chest. If you have a sorting system, then you can do something like this, like I previously showed, to where you have one coming into the top and one coming into the side. So you have 2.5 and 2.5 here, giving you a max total of 5 items per second. However, you have 2 different inputs here. So the way that you would actually combine these two is by crouching and placing a hopper here. So this hopper is going to try to push first. So it's going to push to this hopper here, filling this up with whatever item is pushing. However, at the same game tick, it's going to have this hopper down here pulling from this hopper after it has already pushed to this chest. So essentially what you would end up with is a game tick would start, and this would push into the chest, this would push into the chest, this would push into here, and then all of the pushing's done. So then the hoppers are going to try to pull. So this hopper would pull from here, which is nothing because it's air. This hopper would pull from here, which could potentially be another item. And then this one's going to pull from here, which is going to push it into the chest on the next game tick. So essentially what that means is it's going to evenly divide it. It's going to push, and then this one's going to pull, and then this one's going to push, and then this one's going to pull, giving you double hopper speed. Hopefully I explained that to where it's easy enough to understand. However, there is one thing that you really need to know about the ability for these hoppers to pick up an item. You see, whenever I showed you that we can throw items inside of here and they instantly get picked up, that is great. We have this hopper here that just instantly picked up all of those items. However, if we take the same hopper and we put a chest down on top of it, since it is now pulling out of a container, then that's going to mean that it's only going to be able to pull at a max rate of 2.5 items per second. Why it's substantially slower, I really couldn't tell you, although it has been like that as long as I can remember. And if it did pull all of the items out of the container instantly, well then that would kind of replace the hopper minecart, so that's probably never going to be changed. Hopper minecarts are a total different story, and we are going to be covering that in a future lesson. Now, one thing that you need to know about a hopper is it will always pull from the left inventory, and it will pull from the left and go right. So that means if we have multiple stacks inside of here, it's going to pull all of the items out of this one first before it is able to pull the items out of this one here. Now, if we are pushing items into a container and there is no more room for the oak planks, but there is room for the fences, then it's going to stop pushing these and start pulling these. And then whenever it's pushing into a container, it's also going to fill from the left to the right, going all the way over, dependent on what spots are open. So once this gets filled up to 64, then it would go to this one here, and so forth, moving from the left to the right until it gets all the way to the bottom. However, you might have noticed that we have the fence here, but in the hopper, the fence was actually in the middle. and that is due to a bug that is inside of the Bedrock edition to where it actually randomizes the items going into the chest here, which really should not happen. It's been around forever, but I don't really foresee it ever getting fixed. It would be really nice if it was, but don't count on it. And the same thing goes for whenever it is pulling out of a container. As you can see, we have a double chest up here. The hopper's pulling the items out, putting them inside of this double chest, and it's going to pull all of these items out from the left and working its way right. And this is the very reason why the basic sorting system works, is because if we have an item inside of this very first slot, and then we have all 4 of these following slots filled up with an item that will never go inside of the system, the only item that can ever go through here is going to be whatever item is currently inside of this slot. However, if we lock that item in place by using a configuration of redstone, then we're basically able to keep that item inside of there indefinitely, meaning that this hopper will only accept items and pull the items in that match whatever is inside of the inventory here. And since we have 4 of these slots that are filled up with blocks or items that are never going to go into the system, like a renamed block, the only item that could ever physically go into that sorting system, i.e. through this hopper, is going to be the one that's inside of the first inventory, given that it has enough room. And that's why it's very important whenever you're putting a sorting system together to pay attention to the redstone circuit. That way the redstone circuit ensures that you always have enough room for the item to flow into it, which basically means locking exactly one item inside of here, which would mean that you would lock 11 in this slot, 11 in this slot, 11 in this slot, and 11 inside of this slot, given that you are using a comparator with a redstone line that is 3 blocks long. And that is because the comparator is going to read the percentage of this, if you remember inside of recent lessons, and whenever it gets over a certain percentage full, then it's going to give it another redstone signal. So if we have 45 items inside of here, as soon as we tick over to 46 items, that's going to make the redstone comparator put out a signal strength of 3 instead of putting out a signal strength of 2, which is going to turn off a redstone torch, allowing the hopper to briefly unlock. And that may or may not have just confused you. If it did, do not worry about it, because we are going to be covering sorting systems inside of later episodes inside of this series. However, as mentioned before, we are working our way up to there because, well, you just can't start off with complicated stuff and then expect you to really succeed in learning how it all works. So, baby steps. We're going to learn one component at a time, and then once you fully understand every single redstone component, you'll practically be able to build your own stuff because you know how everything works. However, that does not mean that you should not go inside of a creative world and play around and do a bunch of testing and practice. A lot of the memorization of this is going to be doing it physically and kind of taking a hands-on approach, so I highly encourage you to go into a creative world. That's going to about wrap up this lesson for hoppers. As always, if you guys have any questions, drop a comment below, or you're always welcome to join my public Discord. Links for everything are going to be down inside of the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.